What are investors going to be watching for this week with Nvidia earnings?
Yeah, I think those are the main items. So first of all, they want to see, investors want to see that Nvidia is still on track. The growth is still out of this world. I mean, there's a company growing from 200 billion to over 300 billion. So everybody's going to want to make sure that we're still on track. Then we're going to ask some more specific questions around China. How many of these H200 chips have we sold? Do we still have inventory? There'll be questions about memory and the impact of the much higher prices for memory chips on Nvidia. How much of it is going to impact margins? How much are they going to pass on to consumers? And then investors are going to want to hear about next year and the year after that. But I doubt we're going to get much on that. But that'll still be an area of interest. And then there may be questions about OpenAI and the investments there. There appears to be some confusion about that, but it is a very important venture for Nvidia to invest that much in OpenAI. So there are likely to be questions on that as well.
When we've had you on the show previously and other analysts, we've talked about Nvidia as a bellwether for the AI sector at large. Do you still think that it is that bellwether? I mean, will we see the entire market and cloud companies, AI companies, software companies, everyone used to move based on Nvidia results? Is that going to happen this week as well?
Probably not. I think we're past that stage with Nvidia. Part of it is that they've raised the bar so high that everybody expects them to exceed it. So there's a little less tension, but they also can't exceed it by as much as they used to because the numbers are so big. So it's less of a bellwether. Plus, now there's this notion that Google may have won, and that comes with TPUs, not GPUs. So the AI trade that was really Nvidia centric for a while has now expanded to more Google and Broadcom and AMD and the optical companies and the memory companies. And what's really interesting right now is that those stocks are reflecting a more optimistic view of AI, an investment cycle that could last for several years, while Nvidia's stock is actually trading at a multiple that implies that this may be peak year. So at 24 times earnings, Nvidia is trading at only a slight premium to the market, in spite of the fact that it's growing revenue at 50% with 75% gross margins. If Nvidia can show that it will continue to grow at all into next year, that's the opportunity. Because if you look at the memory chips and the optical chips and Google and Broadcom and AMD, those stocks are implying that the AI cycle will continue for a much longer period of time.
Why do you say that? Why do those stocks indicate that to you?
Their multiples are significantly higher than they used to be. And to justify the multiple, especially if you're looking at Broadcom or AMD or the memory companies, you'd have to believe that there's follow through in the AI investment cycle that will keep the demand for those products going. Where with Nvidia, again, this is on the low end of their historical multiple range, meaning this is setting up an expectation for the cycle to peak this year. For you to believe that AMD and Broadcom are worth more than 30 times earnings, you have to believe that the investment cycle will continue and ramp up for them, which would only happen if there's more capex next year than this year. AMD and Broadcom are not going to ramp if the cycle rolls over, and yet their valuation implies that it will.
So now looking at the recent stock price for Nvidia, we mentioned at the in the intro, it hasn't really. I mean, it hasn't moved this year. It hasn't really moved in the last 6 months. Maybe this is exactly what you're pointing to. But what will it take then to move the stock higher? Now, I mean, if it's not moving higher, it's moving lower, and I find it hard to believe the stock's moving lower. But at the same time, I mean, what is the catalyst then? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, at the very latest, it's as they start looking into 2027 and we start hearing from their customers that they intend to spend more in 2027, 26, that'll probably do the trick. But to be fair to Nvidia, their stock has outperformed the rest of the Mag 6 or Mag 7, depending on how you include that, because really it's all those other companies spending on Nvidia chips. There's really a wealth transfer from Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Meta and Tesla to a certain extent into Nvidia, and so they have outperformed that group. But again, the trade is just broadened. The AI trade, people got a little bored with Nvidia as the AI trade and expanded it to all those other categories. That's really all that's happened. When realistically speaking, there is no AI trade without Nvidia. Nobody's building data centers without Nvidia chips as the primary component, not anytime soon. So as we get towards the latter part of the year and start hearing from companies about their CapEx plans for next year, that should allay the concerns that this is peak spending. And that at the earliest, that's going to be the July report from Microsoft. Microsoft's on a June fiscal year end, so they're going to give some guidance into their next fiscal year, which will include 2027 on their July call. So as we go through the next couple of quarters, we're going to start getting signs that whether or not this year is peak year, and if it's not, that's how Nvidia outperforms.
Now, China is always a focus, at least on the earnings call. People are always watching for what kind of commentary the company gives around sales in China, whether or not they're even counting sales in China now, given the current export controls. How I think my question is not so much what we're expecting to see, because that will change week by week, and look, we've got a whole new family of chips coming out with Vera Rubin, and I think we're going to go through the whole cycle again when people realize that the H200, it's better, but it's not even nearly what we could be getting with the Vera Rubin. So my question is not that. My question is China more or less important to Nvidia today than it was 18 months ago?
Oh, it's a lot less important. It's a rounding error right now. Whether they sell a couple of H200s or don't sell those are already in inventory. They've already been accounted for. It's just noise at this point. The much bigger question is Nvidia still in the China market? China used to be at least a quarter of Nvidia's results. Now it's again a rounding error. But in terms of the market in the future, China will continue to be at least a quarter of the global market for GPUs, for XPUs, for whatever combination of those chips you want to see. And NVIDIA wants to be in that market. They're caught in the middle of an internal debate in the US, of the US-China trade tensions, of the US-China geopolitical tensions. So I don't expect this plot to be resolved anytime soon, but it is very important because it is a quarter of the global market. And if Nvidia has to seed that market, it's going to be Chinese domestic suppliers that take over that market, scale up, and then present a global threat to Nvidia in other markets. So it is very important for Nvidia. They're doing what they can, but I don't expect resolution anytime soon.
Right, and it sounds like what you're saying is it's much less important to the results as they are today and as they're being reported, but it's much more important in the sense that if Nvidia is going to get that bump that we're all looking for or expand that multiple any more than what it is right now, China is going to have to be a factor there. And so it's actually even more important than it was, because this is one of the catalysts that people might be looking for.
That's right. That's right. And if they don't get that China market back, it takes up a lot of the upside, and again creates some long-term threat as the Chinese improve and ramp volumes and ramp capacity in the ecosystem that's outside of the ASML to TSMC to NVIDIA ecosystem that is so dominant right now.
Last question for you. The memory chip supply chain crunch. What are you expecting there in terms of commentary, and when do you think all this gets resolved?
So for Nvidia, I wouldn't expect too much of an impact. First of all, they have very high gross margins they can absorb. It's not that much of the component of their componentry, and they can pass along the rest of it to their consumers. I'm a lot more worried about companies that make low-end PCs and low-end handsets. Not only can they not afford to buy memory, they're not even getting allocation. So if you need any of those devices, I'd go to Best Buy right now, because pretty soon those devices, if they're even available, will be a lot more expensive.
Grant, Gil, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Gil Luria from D.A. Davidson here on TITV.